Let me start with something most people never say out loud. Some people don't disappear because they hate everyone. They disappear because staying became heavier than leaving. At first, it doesn't look dramatic. Replies get slower, plans get canceled, explanations stop. And then, one day, they're gone. No fight, no goodbye, no closure. From the outside, it feels cold, confusing, even cruel. But from the inside, it feels like survival. People who cut everyone off are often labeled distant, arrogant, or emotionally closed. But the truth is much quieter and much more painful. Because cutting people off is rarely the first choice. It's the last one. Most of these people didn't wake up and decide to erase everyone from their life. They endured first. They stayed silent when they were misunderstood. They stayed polite when they were overextended. They stayed strong when they were tired. They became the listener, the fixer, the emotional container for everyone else. And slowly, something inside them wore down. Psychologically, this pattern comes from emotional exhaustion, mixed with a deep fear of being a burden. Many of these people learned early in life that their needs were inconvenient, ignored, minimized. So they adapted. They became low maintenance. They said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. They carried things alone. And over time, that creates a dangerous illusion. When you don't express limits, people assume you don't have any. That's where the breaking point begins. One of the biggest reasons people cut everyone off is emotional saturation. It happens when someone gives too much for too long without feeling seen, met, or reciprocated. Imagine pouring water into a cracked cup. No matter how much you give, it never fills. Eventually, you stop pouring, not because you don't care, but because you're empty. These people remember moments others forgot, being talked over, being reached out to only when needed, being praised for being strong instead of being supported. Strength, when it's never allowed to rest, turns into isolation. Another key truth is this: people who cut everyone off don't trust partial closeness. For them, relationships feel all or nothing, deep connection or emotional danger. This often comes from past experiences where vulnerability was punished, dismissed, or abandoned. So distance starts to feel safer than disappointment. There's also a quiet grief inside them. Grief for the version of themselves that tried harder, that believed communication would fix things, that waited for people to show up. At some point, they stop explaining, not because they have nothing to say, but because they've already said it too many times. And here's something most people don't talk about. Cutting people off doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it brings silence so loud it echoes. At first, there is relief, less tension, less emotional labor, less expectation. But then loneliness creeps in. Because the same walls that keep pain out also keep connection out. Inside, a conflict forms. Safety on one side, longing on the other. They still care. They still remember birthdays. They still wonder how people are doing. They just don't know how to return without losing themselves again. Another reason people cut everyone off is identity fatigue. Many of them were given roles early in life. The responsible one, the mature one, the one who has it together. Over time, they stopped feeling like a person and started feeling like a function. Walking away became the only way to rediscover who they were without expectations attached. Silence became self-definition. There's also perfectionism involved. They don't want to show up halfway. They don't want to disappoint. If they can't be fully present, they'd rather disappear than show up imperfectly. That belief is exhausting, and eventually, disappearing feels easier than failing. From a neurological perspective, chronic emotional stress pushes the nervous system into protection mode. The brain learns that connection equals overwhelm, so withdrawal becomes regulation. This isn't weakness, it's adaptation. But adaptation without healing slowly turns into isolation. The sad truth is this: people who cut everyone off usually value relationships deeply. They just don't trust themselves to have them without self-erasure. They're not cold, they're tired. They're not heartless, they're guarding what's left of their heart. They notice patterns early: emotional imbalance, unspoken expectations. But awareness without boundaries turns into resentment. So instead of confronting, they choose silence. Because silence doesn't argue back. Silence doesn't misunderstand. Silence doesn't demand more. But silence also doesn't heal. The danger comes when cutting people off becomes an identity, when solitude stops restoring and starts isolating. Some people confuse independence with emotional exile. Deep down, many of them are still waiting, not for apologies, not for explanations, but for proof that connection doesn't require self-sacrifice. After the cutoff, life gets quieter. Fewer messages, fewer interruptions. At first, it feels like breathing room. But then comes the second phase. Silence removes mirrors. Without connection, the mind fills gaps with self-doubt. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe it was my fault. They left because explaining never worked. Now they explain everything to themselves. Buried emotions surface: sadness, anger, grief. Distance doesn't erase emotion. It amplifies what was ignored. Some people get stuck here. They turn solitude into hiding. They believe needing less means growing, that independence means disconnection. But healing doesn't happen in isolation forever. It happens in relationships that feel different from the ones that hurt. Over time, hypervigilance develops. Small delays feel like rejection. Simple requests feel like pressure. They enjoy people, but don't lean in. And then they say, I just don't connect anymore. But the truth is, they don't feel safe enough to stay. Another quiet fear lives underneath: the fear of repeating the pattern. So instead of learning boundaries, they choose distance. Understandable, but not sustainable. Because humans don't heal alone forever. Emotional atrophy sets in. Feelings become harder to name. Joy feels muted. Life feels manageable, but not meaningful. And the question appears: is this peace or numbness? The answer isn't going back, and it isn't letting everyone in. It's discernment. Healthy connection isn't about access, it's about choice. Healing lives in the middle, learning to say no without disappearing, expressing needs without apologizing, staying without shrinking. Cutting people off once protected you, but it was never meant to be permanent. Leaving wasn't a flaw. It was a response to unmet needs. But staying cut off doesn't meet them either. Connection doesn't require perfection. It requires humanity. Showing up tired, saying, I don't have much today. Being real instead of reliable. Healing often begins quietly. One safe person, one honest moment, one choice to stay. Not everywhere, not for everyone, but where it matters. That's not weakness. That's emotional maturity.